Hi, Abe. You're you have yourself closed off.
I'm okay now.
I was going to go to Ernie's house. From my house to his
Yeah,
house is over
because
a half hour. With all the rain, I said,
no, go
I can
for it.
sit in
It's
the comfort
convenient.
of my office.
Right. I hear you.
So
Yeah, I'm in the comfort of my hotel room in Hong Kong.
there you go. Even better.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to. I couldn't do both. I couldn't do the shear and that. I did the daf, but I didn't. I couldn't get on and do the two things. So
What two things?
I was going to do the daf and this,
Oh,
the Rav Kook shear.
is this the second part that he's doing? What is
He
it?
does it what he was explaining to us is that he does it every couple of months, like every 2 to 3 months. They're going to do a shear together with
Okay.
Nati and him on the things
Rav
that
Kook.
Rav Kook did.
Hmm.
So we'll see.
Could be interesting.
It should. I think it's interesting to see. I think he really, for Ernie, medicine is a secondary. I think being a Rav is much more important.
I don't know. He spends a lot of time on it, that's for sure.
Yeah, he does. Rightly so. Even though I have to tell you that for me, when we do the daf, I do it with this other guy from Israel, and he does it in Spanish, and
Mhm.
uh, and we do it slower, and it's I get more comprehension, so it's interesting.
I do it in the morning with Rabbi Echelon, and then
And then do a
and then
review with Ernie.
and then review it with. They're both fast. Okay, that's a problem.
No,
But
no,
I like the way
my other one is slow.
I like the way Ernie like puts the word like he knows what he's talking about. Like
Oh,
he's
clearly, clearly.
yeah.
I have to tell you, I have one issue in this whole series of this Masechtas, this whole idea of pigul and the idea that the person has to self-identify that they are
Hello,
committing
everybody.
some.
Right. Well, they have to do it out loud, I think. Okay.
We have a bunch of people on the Zoom. That's nice. We have
Well,
Dr.
Okay.
the rain kept us away. Come on, we melt.
Botnick. I just want to show you the refreshments so it
I
comes
know. I was
redemption next time.
disappointed.
Send
Next
some over.
time. Next time.
Lemons and chocolate bark. It's very good.
With a Coke before space.
On the table. I love.
It's good for my diet.
Good for my diet too.
uh,
Okay, maybe we should start. This is the second gathering in honor of Rav Kook's 90th Yartzeit, the first chief rabbi. We were introduced to some of his thought and ideas a couple months ago when we first did this. We do have a handout. I don't have it set up for the Zoom, but we'll make sure we translate everything that needs to be translated. The emphasis in today's analysis of Rav Kook's thought is his deep love for Eretz Yisrael that we're going to try to investigate. And I'm going to say a few things, and of course, Nati is going to continue. And I'm going to conclude with another historical vignette. If you remember, I spoke about the famous tshuva train that Rav Kook went on with Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld in 1914 to the Galil. We talked about that episode in Rav Kook's life. There's another very interesting historical episode that we'll deal with at the end. This book is called Torah Eretz Yisrael. This is Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. This was Rav Kook's son, who became the Rosh Yeshiva Merkaz Rav, which was the yeshiva that his father, Rav Kook, started. And he was really the spiritual father of all various Bnei Akiva rabbis that we grew up with. Rav Druckman, Rav Neria, Rav Amital, all of the Rosh Yeshivas that we know in the Gush and the Bnei Akiva world were really products of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. Of course, he gave over in a systematic way his father's Torah to the Talmidim. A lot of it was Rav Tzvi Yehuda's own thought, but I'm going to quote some things that he quoted from his father. So first, he brought, and Rav Kook brought from a sefer called Chesed LaAvram, who died in Hebron in the year 5404. So that you're talking about in the year 1600. Rav Avram Azulai. He wrote that the first night a person comes to Eretz Yisrael, his soul rises to a spiritual world during sleep, then returns in the morning from its nocturnal wandering. Normally, the same soul returns after sleep. That's why in the morning, we say Moda Ani, for the fact that our soul was returned. But it's not the same thing if you're in Eretz Yisrael. He says, after coming to Israel, a remarkable change takes place. After a person breathes and absorbs the air of Eretz Yisrael, he is transformed. When he awakens his first morning in Israel, he has a new soul.
So he doesn't have to say modern.
It's just, the first time he made the distinction he made is normally when we go to sleep, it's the same soul that we had that day that comes back to us the next morning. But when you sleep in Eretz Yisrael, you're transformed. If a man is outside the land of Israel, he has a soul of lesser celestial forces. If he merits to enter the land of Israel, remember, we're talking about hundreds of years. We're going to the land of Israel was a major ordeal. What you had to do to go to Eretz Yisrael by boat. People didn't survive boat trips, etc. And until the modern age, to go to Eretz Yisrael was not a simple thing. So it was indeed a merit. And soul from a newly created source comes to him and clothes itself with an old soul. The first night he sleeps in Eretz Yisrael, both souls depart from him and rise to worlds above. And in the morning, only the new soul returns. So all of us who visit Eretz Yisrael have merited that we have a new soul, different soul than the soul that we were born with.
Does that mean when we go every time we get another soul?
Or does it like?
No, you
Does it for
you
free?
deposit the soul in Ben Gurion Airport. As soon as you come with the customs.
Now, Rav Kook explained, we view the physical world as reality. But Rav Kook taught us that this was only a partial truth. In actuality, the spiritual world is more real than the physical world. We don't always recognize this, but our forefathers did. We're about to, soon in a few weeks, Yaakov's dream upon his departure from Israel, he sees a ladder with angels going up and coming down. The angels who ascend are angels who accompany him in the land of Israel. The angels who come down are the angels who accompany him on his descent into exile. When Yaakov returns to the land, he once again sees this change of celestial guard, Machanayim, in this time in reverse. So and therefore when the sun rises, he's not the same Yaakov. His soul has also been transformed. The Gaon of Vilna echoed this idea by saying that a person is not complete until he comes to the land of Israel. When it says, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem, Yaakov came complete to the city of Shechem. Shalem is in its meaning of wholeness, and that he wasn't complete until he came to Eretz Yisrael. This is a very important part that Rav Kook taught. Eretz Yisrael is not like every other land. It's not just another geographic area with mountains and rivers, valleys and lakes. Eretz Yisrael is something else entirely. Yes, it has mountains and rivers, but these mountains and rivers are a part of us. What does it mean, us? It means Klal Yisrael. Inseparable from our being and from our national task of uplifting mankind to a knowledge of Hashem. Eretz Yisrael is Kadosh. It is the land chosen by Hashem for His nation, created with unique holy properties. Our connection to Eretz Yisrael is not based solely on the fact that it's our homeland. There is a reason it's our homeland. The Almighty created it especially suited to us. We can only be a nation there, only there in Eretz Yisrael, could we genuinely fill our Torah, not just in the sense of observing all the mitzvahs applicable only in Israel. Do you know that over 1/3 of the Taryog mitzvahs are mitzvahs that are tluyos ba'aretz, but in the deeper, more fundamental sense of being an Am Kadosh? Now, Rav Kook tried to teach his Talmidim that these concepts were so new and abstract, and it was difficult for Golus Yidden to comprehend. 2,000 years of exile without our land, without a sovereign Jewish nation on that land, had dimmed our perceptions of Am Yisrael. Entire sections of the Torah dealing with the nations living in the land were not studied, including the agricultural laws unique to the land of Israel, the laws of the temple, sacrifices, ritual purity, which comprise literally half of the Mishnah. Those of us in Daf Yomi, we've been going through for the last 2 months, laws of Korbanot, laws of the Mizbeach. So it's only a small group of people. We don't as a nation on a regular basis learn these laws. The wide bodies of law applying to monarchy, the Sanhedrin, and war were also not studied for 2,000 years. What did they study? Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Gittin, Kiddushin. These foundations of Israeli nationhood were not relevant to our life in exile. In the exile, our identity shifted away from our national character, forming a Yiddishkeit which focused on the individual, not on the klal. To Jews in Golus, the land of Israel was close to their hearts, but it was a faraway dream. Our homeland, yes. Kadosh, yes. A place to perform extra mitzvahs, yet. But a land vital to the Torah? A thinking evolved that we could be God-fearing Jews just as well in Berlin. A tragedy whose outcome is familiar to all. I'm going to read a famous Meshech Chochmah, the Or Sameach, Rav Simcha Meir Midvinsk, lived 1890 or so in the town of Tvinsk.
And the Luchos.
And he wrote the Meshech Chochmah. He wrote, if a Jew thinks that Berlin is Jerusalem, then a raging storm wind will uproot him by his trunk. A tempest will arise and spread its roaring waves and swallow and destroy and flood forth without pity.
Wow.
Rav Yaakov Emden, somebody we talked about over Shabbos and in relationship to the Shabtai Tzvi episode, he has a famous Sidur called the Beit Yaakov, and there's an introduction to that Siddur. When it seems to us in our present peaceful, remember, Rav Yaakov Emden lived in the 1740s. He lived in Altona, Hamburg, that area. When it seems to us in our present peaceful existence outside the land of Israel that we have found another Eretz Yisrael and Jerusalem, this is to me the greatest, deepest, most obvious and direct cause of all of the awesome, frightening, monstrous, unimaginable destructions that we have experienced in the Golus.
Wow.
Okay. Now, quoting from Rav Kook from Orot, Eretz Yisrael, that's the first chapter, chapter 1, his first statement. Even in Israel, he notes that few people had delved into these deep ideas. The great tzaddikim understood this. But this deep aspect of Torah was only passed on to a selected few. We see in the writings of the Maharal, the Kuzari, the Gaon of Vilna, and other holy works. But throughout the long exile, without a land or sovereign nation of our own, matters pertaining to nationhood, the land of Israel and Klal Yisrael simply weren't stressed. To us, what we're referring to the students of Rav Kook, this was a revolutionary understanding of Judaism, passed down from Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook to his son and transmitted to us who were chosen not to be the guardians of a secret, but to spread it through Bnei Akiva. Rav Chaim Druckman taught us, gave us these shiur, and I remember myself in Malibu, 1969. He came for the whole summer, and he taught to the seminary students, Rav Druckman, and he was a student, Rav Yehuda Kook. So we learned it literally, p. One thing I want to say, one more thing before I give it over to Nati. In Rav Kook's yeshiva, they learned that Torah was not just a divine moral code and a system of ritual practices. Torah is a national constitution, divine, cosmic, and national law, embodied in a divinely chosen community and fulfilled in a divinely chosen land. A divine community with a real government, a real army, a real economy, and all of the other down-to-earth aspects of normal national life. This orientation to Torah brought an enlightened understanding of the state of Israel today, which represents an important stage of the divine historical process, which brings Jewish sovereignty over Israel to its messianic ideal. There was a famous sefer written by Rabbi Menachem Kasher called Hatkufa Hagdolah, written right after 1948, a letter which encouraged participation in the state's first election. So after the creation of the state, May 1948, they went to elections. If you didn't know that, the Aguda and the Mizrach, everybody went on the same, they were all on the same lists. And listen to the letter that was written by Rav Nachman Kasher. We thank Hashem for gracing us with his abundant mercy and charity to let us witness the first blossoms of the beginning of the Geula, that's Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu in Hebrew, with the establishment of the state of Israel. The letter was signed by hundreds of rabbis, including the former chief rabbis Rav Yitzhak Halevi Herzog, Rav Ben Zion Meir Uziel, Harav Tzvi Pesach Frank, chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Harav Terkachinsky, the author of the Luach Eretz Yisrael and the Gesher HaChaim, Harav Yechezkel Sarna, the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron, and Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin, author of the Talmudic Encyclopedia, and Harav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Rosh Yeshiva of Kol Torah. So they all signed on the letter of Menachem Kasher to Kufa Gdolah that they should all go to elections, and they all signed this letter saying that the creation of the state of Israel is this Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu.
49, yeah.
1949.
Who wrote the introduction?
No, that's Rav Menachem Kasher.
No, who wrote this introduction to the book? Who wrote this book?
No, this is a book. This is a book
I
with
know.
Torah Rav Tzvi Yehuda and Rav.
But it seems that somebody's commentating on it, doesn't seem-
No. This is a footnote where they brought the letter of Rav Kasher.
Yeah, no, I understand, but what?
Any more
is
of
that?
is Rav Kook saying it?
Yeah, this is the things that I circled came from Rav Kook. Yes.
By the way, every Thursday night, we used to go from Kerem B'Yam, we used to go to Yerushalayim. We listened to Rav Kook in his house.
1975. I davened Friday night with Rav Kook. He was still alive in the base medrash in the round in Kiryat Moshe, right next to Mosada Rav Kook.
No, he lived in a different home.
But that's where he davened.
That's where he davened, but we went where he lived in his home, in his dining room. Basically, we used to sit in every Thursday
It's a big split.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very big split.
So just to continue on what Ernie said, there is a piska. It's a segment of Rav Kook's writing in the Book of Orot, and that's the fundamental text that talks about how Rav Kook view the importance and the gravity and the holiness of the land of Israel. That's the text. If we want to know what he wants, what he thinks, that's this couple of lines here. And it's very interestingly that he starts with a negative way, almost he's debating with somebody. If you read, I just want to, before explaining the words, you see, Eretz Israel einena davar chitzoni. Eretz Israel, it's not
Shlili.
it's not an external thing, but it looks like he has a debate with somebody. So who is the figure that he's debating with? So the figure that he's debating with, it's a figure that we know we know is a very important figure, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. Basically, all this part is a debate
Response
with
to him.
a response to him. Not only a response to him, he used his own words and write against, or not against, or write against his opinion, basically. He used their own words without saying, without identified, without naming Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. He talks about them. It's very interesting that in the Igrot, which means the letters of Rav Kook, it's about 4 or 5 books full of letters that he corresponds with many, many people. Then he does recognize Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch by name. For example, he says in a certain letter that he wrote about the Jewish diaspora in Germany, he said, אחינו היקורים שלומי אמוני בני אשכנז ההולכים בעקבות גדול הדעה נזיר האלוקים המרומם, הגרשר הירש. He praised him, גדול הדעה means a great knowledge, נזיר אלוהים, which means a crown of God. אשר then he names his name, and then he says, אשר הציל בגבול ישע ימינו את שארית ישראל המערבית. It means he thinks that Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch saved all the Western community, all the Western Jewish community, Germany, all of Western Europe. So he does recognize them, he does appreciate them. And then another correspondent, he writes about schools. When he came to the city of Yafo, he established a school which is called Tachkimoni. Tachkimoni school was a different school than the regular Chadorim. They had math and languages and geometry, and they study Limudei Chol, as we know. And then he names it. He names it. He says we just open up the school, and the schools are staffed with the teachers and how we say headmasters. בעלי מדע ויראת שמיים מיהדות אשכנז means he recognized that he's building, Rav Kook himself is building the educational schools, as we know, Mamlachti Dati today and Yeshivat Chorev, all the Yeshivot Tichoniot. That's his first yeshiva, and he builds it on the basis of Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. So there is no animosity there. There is no bad feelings. He appreciates them, but then when he doesn't agree, he doesn't agree. So let's go to the Tochen. He says Rav Kook here starts Eretz Israel.
Do you have some more for the new guests?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
ארץ ישראל אינה דבר חיצוני, קניין חיצוני לאומה בתור אמצעי למטרה. Means the land of Israel is not just an external part, an external קניין חיצוני, external something that has a external connection to the nation.
And is
רק
רק
בתור אמצעי.
and not a means to an end.
A means to an end means, I want to come to shul, yeah. So my goal is to come to shul, and I said to myself, how am I going to come to shul at 6:30 in the morning or 6:15 in the morning? Should I take a horse? Should I take a bike? Should I take a car? Should I go a Waymo, or should I take an Uber? Okay, I have all those possibilities. I have emtsaim. I have all those means to come to the place. So if you say that Eretz Israel is an emtsai, it's a means, it's a method to practice Judaism, it means that if maybe one day it will be another means to practice Judaism in a better way. Maybe it will be a better way to practice Judaism. Because if you define it as emtsai, as a means, so it means that you can see, what is the best means to reach the goal of Judaism. So by doing that, you're minimizing Eretz Israel. So Eretz Israel, it's not an emtsai. It's not a means. It's not a way to practice Judaism in the best way, like Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, source number 2, says clearly. In Igrot Safon, in his book, Igrot Safon, גם התורה ניתנה במדבר, ללמדנו, the Torah was given in the desert, ללמדנו שעילוי אדם אינו תלוי לא בזמן ולא במקום. It means you can reach your spiritual goals
Even in the midbar.
even in the midbar, and it's not dependent on the time. נמצאנו למדים, אמת, טיב הארצות, יש פה כדי להטיב האומות ותכונתן. Of course, if you live in Switzerland, you know, you live in Switzerland. If you live in New York, you live in New York. If you live in Aspen, Colorado, you know, you kind of relax. You kind of relax. So
Here, I also have a bunch of chairs.
So basically what Rav Shamshon Raphael says that the land of Israel is the best way to practice Judaism. But it doesn't mean that's the only way to practice Judaism. Matter of fact, in other places he says that you almost find meanings in diaspora. He said that deliberately HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out from the land of Israel who went to exile in order to influence the Goyim, that they will learn from us. And we are kind of Chabad Shlichim in all the four corners of the world. And then we can, you know, we can teach the world about Judaism, about Emunah, about Torah, about morality. And almost he finds in a way, he idealize the diaspora, idealize the exile event as a better way to practice Judaism in Eretz Yisrael. And his main argument is because the Torah was given outside of Eretz Yisrael. So what is Rav Kook? What? Yeah. So what is the answer from Rav Kook to that? So first of all, Rav Kook doesn't agree with that. It's not an emtsai, it's not a vehicle, it's something else. It's something which is much more essential. It's an essence. Here, Eretz Yisrael chativa atzmutit. What is etzem in the Lashon of Rav Kook? Essential. It means it's not a method, it's not a means, it's essential. If we don't have Eretz Yisrael, we will not exist. We are not in exist. We're not in existence. Kshura bekesher chaim im ha'oma. It means it's not that we are somehow having a external connection to Eretz Yisrael because we spent some years there and we have history there. It's something which is much more a real connection between the two of them. And then he continues, מתוך כך, אי אפשר לעמוד על התוכן של סגולת קדושת ישראל ולהוציא פועל את עומק חיבתה בשום השכלתה רציונלית אנושית. You cannot explain the connection between us, the Jewish people, and the land of Israel, the essentials or the essence of Eretz Yisrael by any rational way, because every rational way, what is a rational way? How you say, what is the connection between the Italians and Italy? So you said history, culture, and people live there. I mean, they're still there. The Italians are still there. We actually, most of us, I mean, even if you say that our birth as a nation, where it was in Egypt, so it wasn't there. History, most of our history is not in Eretz Yisrael until now. So you cannot explain it in any rational argument. And if you're going to try to explain it in a rational argument, you're going to come to a block or a dead end. Like, look at the argument today. You know, we are colonized. Because if you try to apply a rational argument for that, you're not going to. So what is the explanation? Kim beruach Hashem asher lo uma bichlal. What is the ruach Hashem? What is the spirit of Hashem? The spirit of Hashem, he tells you, the spirit of Hashem, that's the connection to the land. What is the spirit of Hashem did? The spirit of Hashem, where we meet with the spirit of Hashem. Lech lecha mi'artzecha u'moladetecha u'mibeit avicha el haaretz asher areka. Kum italech ba'aretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avinu, Kum italech ba'aretz le'orka u'lerachba ki lecha etnena. So it's not about. So so I mean, I don't want to say the argument of Rav Hirsch is not correct, but I'm saying Rav Kook saying, first of all, yes, we got the Torah in the Midbar, but the Torah itself starts in Chumash Bereshit. And what is the Chumash Bereshit says? Immediately, the first person to recognize God, Avraham Avinu, God is telling, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells them to go to the land of Israel. That's the Ruach Hashem. You cannot explain the connection to the land unless you open up, unless you start not with Parshat Yitro. You have to start before. You have to open up Chumash Bereshit. You have to learn Parshat Lech Lecha. The Torah doesn't start just with the mitzvahs. The Torah starts with Bereshit, Koach Ma'asav V'gid La'amo, לתת להם את הסגולה, לתת להם את ארץ ישראל. That's what Rashi says. So you cannot start.
Start with the first pasuk where Rashi says on the first pasuk.
Yeah.
That the people will say listim
atem, and then birtzono natana lachem. Yes, so that's where you start. You start with Avraham Avinu. That Avraham Avinu has to go to the land of Israel. So that's the Ruach Hashem. That's what he refers. Kim beruach Hashem shalom. And then he goes out. He continues. Be'atba'a tivit arochanit asher benishmat Israel. It means this Ruach Hashem didn't stay in the books. Didn't stay in the stories. It penetrated every Jew in the most natural way. So it means even if you met somehow, you travel in time by a time machine and you go out to Warsaw 300 years ago, or you go out to Marrakesh 600 years ago, and you meet a Jew there in the street, and you ask them, "What do you think about Eretz Israel?" He will light up. Even the simplest Jew, the Eglon, he's gonna light up. He's gonna tell you, "Oh, what are you singing on Shabbos table? What piyutim you're singing about Eretz Yisrael? What is in the Birkas Hamazon? The blessing of Eretz Yisrael. How do you pray 3 times a day? So he went from a spirit of Hashem to every natural feeling of every Jew and Jew. Kol Yehudi v'Yehudi. And then he says, שהיא שולחת את קוויה בצבעים הטבעיים בכל האורחות של הרגשה בריאה. What is צבעים טבעיים? Yeah, Rav Kook is a poetry, but every word here counts. צבעים, it means aesthetics. It means the same thing that you cannot explain. When you see something beautiful, you see a great picture, you cannot explain why it's beautiful. You cannot explain why it's so gorgeous. You don't need to explain. So a Jew doesn't need to explain what is connection to Eretz Yisrael. It's in the most natural way for him to be connected to the land of Israel. And then he ends up, ונועם עליון את לבב קדושי הרעיון והוא מוקיע המחשבה הישראלית. It means also, yes, of course, he recognized that it came. Every Jew shared this idea, this Ruach Hashem, this connection to the land of Israel. But the people that they are, the leaders, the rabbis, the people that wrote the poetry, the people that wrote the davenings, the people that they are, the Mekubolim, the Rebbes that they wrote the books about Hasidus, all of them are basically talking about Eretz Yisrael all the time. So it was a shared. It's not just an elite that dreamed about the land of Israel. It's not just a bunch of simple people that had an illusion. It's shared by all the nation from top to bottom. This tshuka, this connection to the land of Israel, this Ruach Hashem, that it's inside us and it pushes us. For example, 300 years ago, 200 years ago, a shadar came from the community in Israel, came to Vilna to collect money. Everybody asked him, where you came from, tell me about the land. That was the excitement that the word from Eretz Yisrael. The Keren Kayemet, the famous pushke. What is the famous pushke? The famous pushke was every Jew came in and put money there because he know that he went to the land of Israel. There is nothing like that in every other nation. You cannot explain it. It's not a nationality. It's not a emtsai. It's not a mean. It's not a method. It's not a car. Oh, car versus a horse, or versus a Waymo versus how do I come to shul? It's something which is much more deeper. then he continues, המחשבה על דבר ארץ ישראל, שהיא רק ערך חיצוני כדי העמדת אגודת אומה, אפילו כשהיא באה כדי לבצר על ידה את רעיון היהודי בגולה, כדי לשמור על צביונו ולאמץ את בונה והירה והחיזוק של מצוות המציאות בתורה הגנה, אין את הפרי ראוי לקיום. Means, if you think that Eretz Yisrael it's only an external value, means only to make yourself, oh, you think I'm davening 3 times a day, and I'm inserting ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים, because I want to keep my community, I want to give them something. No, it's not. אין לה הפרי הראוי לקיום, כי היסוד הזה רעוע בערך איתן של ארץ הקודש, because the strong feeling of Eretz Yisrael will take over. Basically, he says to Rav Shamshon Raphael, you know what, you have a great illusion that you think that you're going to live in Germany, and you're going to say, oh, every day you're going to say it religiously, you're going to have a men's choir singing it in a beautiful harmonized way, and you're not going to think that this is a real thing. This is okay, I'm going tomorrow to Eretz Yisrael. You're going to see that the idea of Eretz Yisrael will take over.
Right. I think it further strengthens the view that I mentioned at the introduction, that in Golus we thought ourselves always as individual Jews. We didn't think as much as a klal. And the facts of the state of Israel has made us think much more nationally. There is no such thing as an army by an individual person. You go to war as a klal, or you have an economy as a klal. And when we lived as individual Jews throughout the diaspora, we didn't think that way. So the real connection to Eretz Yisrael is the klal has that connection. Yes, it manifests in every individual's neshama. Like we said, if you sleep in Eretz Yisrael, you get a new neshama. But as a new neshama is part of a greater klal.
Yeah, I will go to number 3. That's a letter from Rav Shamshon Raphael to Rav Tzvi Kalisher. And you're going to see how he's almost dismissive of the idea of Zionism. He says, לרב צבי הירש קלישר, דעתי קצרה מהכיר את הטוב והאמת אשר יפרחו כפי דעתו רמה. I'm not so smart like you. דעתי קצרה. I'm not so smart like you. You're smarter than me. משתדלותו בעניין יישוב הארץ. I don't know. It means he basically criticized him. Why you're such a Zionist? I cannot, לעניות דעתי, I cannot understand what is behind that. ואשר לבבו למצווה זו וגם חובה גדולה יחשוב, ליכוד שכלי לא כן ידומה. You, Tzvi Hirsch Kalisher, you think that it's a great obligation to do issue of Eretz Yisrael. You're leading the Zionist movement. I'm talking about
pre-Zionism.
Pre-Zionism. He's the seed of the Zionism. So I don't think it's such a great idea. Likud sichli lo ken yidumeh. My brain doesn't tell me that it's a great thing. My logic doesn't support it. Ve'ani be'onyi asher ein li esek benistarot. I'm not a Kabbalist. Ein tov likim lachzik b'derech hakvusha me'amotenu. My best thing to me is to learn and to keep the same way that our forefathers did. אשר לא שמו לנגד עינינו כי אם להיות חרדים. We thought only about how to be religious. בכל מאמצי תוכנו לתקן דרכנו בדרך התורה לפני אלוקים, להרים מכשול מקרבנו, to be better, ולצפות לגאולה בכל יום, of course to hope for the redemption, ומעולם לא שמו על שכמנו דרך הגאולה. We didn't think to pave the way for the redemption. God should pave the way for the redemption. We shouldn't pave the way. We shouldn't do anything practically to do it.
And this is what, the Dati Jews in Germany in the 1910s, the 1920s, they were the founders of Agudat Yisrael.
Yeah.
The people who came from Rav Hirsch's community, etc., they were not part of the Zionists. The Breuers were not into Zionism.
They changed later.
Yeah, later, but at that time they certainly were not.
על ידי חיזוק ותיקון אדמת קודש, כי אם על ידי חיזוק ותיקון לבבינו ומעשינו תושייה. We should concentrate about being better people, and then, Hashem יעשה הטוב בעינו. So let's end the three last lines of Rav Kook. In response to that, Rav Kook says, האימוץ האמיתי של רעיון העדות בגולה, and that's referred to us. That's actually something which is, I don't know about you, because you're about to exit, but for us, if we stay here, you should know that the only way to get stronger here, האימוץ האמיתי של רעיון היהדות בגולה, the only way, Rav Kook doesn't shy to say, oh, there is a diaspora and the diaspora needs to be strong. You need to be a strong community. How you can be a strong community in the diaspora? בוא יבוא רק מצד עומק שיקועו בארץ ישראל. We're going to keep ourselves and we're going to keep our identity only if we are משקע.
Invest.
And we should invest in all of our thoughts and last three lines here. Only if we put everything, all of our investment.
Fourth paragraph on the.
רק מצד שיקועו בארץ ישראל. Only if we invest completely in the land of Israel, which I know that a lot of people here in the room are doing. I mean, they are putting every sweat and every blood and every thoughts and every dream of them. They're putting in the תיקון הארץ, in the way to make our land and our army strong. ומתקוות ארץ ישראל יקבל תמיד את כל תכונותיו העצמיות. And with the hope of the connection to Eretz Israel, we in the diaspora will get strength. ציפייה לישועה היא הכוח המעמיד של היהדות הגלותית. Means the hope for salvation, the hope for Yeshua, the hope for redemption. That's the only way that we as a diaspora Jews can be strengthened ourselves. והיהדות של ארץ ישראל היא הישועה עצמה. And the Judaism in Eretz Israel, that's the Yeshua. So that's basically it, what Rav Kook is saying. And I mean, it's amazing to read it. It's amazing to understand it. And the way that you see today, how the events are folding, I mean, clearly, Rav Kook tzadak. He was right. He was right about what's going on.
I'd like to conclude. Please look at this handout that starts with Olat Re'iyah. This is from Rav Kook's Siddur, where on every part of the Siddur he makes comments. So this comment made on the bracha that you make to be mafresh, trumas, and maisras.
Which page?
Okay, so it's the one that's stapled. It's 5 pages. Turn to the second to the last page. Second to the where it says where you see the bracha for lahafrish chala. So this is a little essay that he has on the mitzvot hatluyot ba'aretz. I just want to read a little bit. Part of this is to get a flavor of Rav Kook. Rav Kook was an amazing, he was a mystic and he's a philosopher. But look at, nobody writes Hebrew like Rav Kook. And just, we'll get a flavor. We're going to read a little bit. I'll translate it. But you see how he writes. Hahod va'peheram yuchad, the beauty, the unique, the singular beauty. Sheyesh b'mitzvos hatluyos ba'aretz, that are in the mitzvahs that are connected to the land, like trumas, maisrits, right? Now remember, Rav Kook comes to Eretz Yisrael in 1902, becomes the chief rabbi of Jaffa. And he dies in 1935. He's been appointed chief rabbi by the British in 1919. So he served as the chief rabbi for almost 16 years. So this is the 90th Yartzeit, 1935. Now it's 2025. But the Haganah is in process of being formed, and Palmach and the early stages of it. And so you have to recognize what Rav Kook saw. So when the mitzvahs hatluyos ba'aretz are being performed now by us who have returned to Eretz Yisrael after 2,000 years, either by the soldier or the pioneer, ha'olech uboneh et Eretz Avot, who is rebuilding the land of our forefathers, umechin achrit v'tikva yoter chazaka v'yoter bayra l'dor yavo, who is building an end and a hope that's only going to get stronger for the next generation. Mitgalehu lanu mitoch az chavtzenu hapnimi. The fact that this new generation is being mekayim all these mitzvos is showing us our internal longing, hamipaem bekerev nishmatenu, that is beating in our hearts, or really in our neshamas. La'amid et sivyon umatenu al eretz avotenu b'malat Torah, that it's planting the flag and the beauty of our nation in our forefathers' land. B'chol shirtutea v'kvea mashlimim et chunata, every detail, every guts, every line. Hamegalim umablitim shezoti umatenu, that proves that this is what we're supposed to be doing. Anu Bercha Harem Mekori, that's the highest level of our sources. Begoyota, in our nationhood, Benafshat, in the Klal Yisrael soul, Berucha v'nishmata, Lizot anachnu shoafim lechadesh aleinu yamim
That's a
kadmonim.
very important.
We are trying to renew the way we were before. Yes, not
one point here that he also marked the way that it's something that it's going on today with a lot of anti-Semitism. One of the arguments against us that we are a religion, we are not a nation. Because if you say that we are a religion and not a nation, so you can say, oh, there is no territorial claim. There is no way that a religion doesn't get a land. If you're a Muslim, there is no Muslim.
Rav Kook says we have no religion without Eretz Yisrael. And we start.
No, we have we are a nation. He says we are a nation.
And it can't be without Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, it's not the nationhood of the Jews. It's not just about the Torah.
It's also about Eretz Yisrael.
Also about the nationhood itself. There is Am, there is Eretz, and there is Torah.
Hine yashanenu shnat tardema meshach galut aruka v'kasha meod. We have been in a deep slumber for 2,000 years. Kochotenu haleumim, and therefore we had powers, national powers. We had Yudah Maccabi. We had kings in Eretz Yisrael, but we've been natuk from that for 2,000 years. We've been separated from that. This koach leumi, but it's nisharu az bluim b'kirbenu pnima. We still have that potential power inside of us. Remember, this is 1934-33. We don't have Ben Gurion, and we have Ben Gurion, but we don't have the Knesset. We don't. But the foundations of it are being laid. Mibachutz, hakol naseh mikomat mizukanav al mibifnim. Tala chayim holech v'zorem. There's a stream. It's flowing. Kashem shamitzvos hamasyos bichlalan b'chol milohen alchu imanu begalot. Just like tefillin and other mitzvos, lulav, they went with us into Golus. V'shamru lanu ba, et lachayin, and it preserved the moisture of our lives. And we had an inner longing for that. So too, now that we've come back to Eretz Yisrael, and we're going to do Trumas and Maestris and all the things that are connected to Eretz Yisrael, this will also be raised. We didn't have all of that, but now we have. I want to conclude, at least my part, I'm going to conclude by reading the following episode. Mm-hmm. On the evening of June 16th, 1933, so this is 2 years before the death of Rav Kook, Chaim Alozerov, a brilliant young intellectual and head of the political department of the Zionist executive successor body, the Jewish Agency, was shot and killed while walking with his wife along the beach in Tel Aviv. 3 days later, Abba Achimeir and Avram Stavsky, two members of Zev Zavotinsky's revisionist movement, were arrested and charged with his murder. Achimeir, born Gaisinovich, was a 35-year-old journalist and intellectual. His doctoral dissertation was on Spengler's Decline of the West. He admired European strongmen like Marsha Pilsudski of Poland and for a while Mussolini, and was co-founder of an anti-British movement called Brit HaBiryonim. The Thugs Covenant. Stavsky, the accused shooter, was an undistinguished 27-year-old card-carrying revisionist, a cherutnik, just arrived from Lithuania. A third revisionist, Tzvi Rosenblatt, age 21, recently of Chernovitz, which is in Ukraine, was arrested several days later. The temperature of the Yishuv, never low, had in the months preceding the murder been more feverish than ever, as labor and the revisionists fought for control over institutions and for public opinion with mounting intensity. Yes, Break It was the title of Jabotinsky's manifesto against the Histadrut, the labor federation of Ben-Gurion's Workers' Party, known by its Hebrew acronym Mapai. Hitler's rise to power, January 1933, had ratcheted up the fear and complexity, suffusing an already complicated situation. The revisionists advocated a total boycott of Germany, while the Zionists left and center sought legally to transfer as much Jewish property as possible to Palestine. In the early stages of the Nazi regime, emigration from Germany was still the official preferred solution to the Jewish problem. And Arlozorov had represented the Zionist executives in negotiations with the Germans, which were coming to a head and resulted in several agreements later that year. Those of you who have not read it, there's a book called The Seventh Million, which talks about, by Tom Segev, which talks about that in the 1930s was a massive German immigration. Prior to this, we talked about the Aliyah Rishon, Aliyah Shniya, which was primarily from Poland, and all of a sudden it changed. So doctors came from Germany, musicians came, symphony, and Israel changed in the 1930s. A lot of wealth came because they negotiated that all these people could come with their wealth. That's why they had this concordat. Ben Gurion had a concordat with the Nazis. But that's what's so aggravating. Now remember, 1953, I'm just jumping ahead 20 years, when Ben Gurion wanted to get reparations from the Germans, and they wanted to give us a couple of submarines, etc. So Begin had massive riots in Jerusalem, attacking the Knesset. The same fight that happened here in 33, 20 years later, they also fought against getting reparations from the Germans, the Wiedergutmachung, that, listen, my father in 1961 bought the duplex that my mother lived in for the next 60 years with $5,000 that he got Wiedergutmachung from 1961 from that German settlement. So it comes full circle. Anyways, the morning before the murder of Arlozorov, nearly all of page 2 of the revisionist newspaper, the National Front, was devoted to an attack on Arlozorov by a friend of Achimeir's, Yochanan Pogrebinski, titled "The Stalin-Ben-Gurion-Hitler Pact." It accused Mr. Arlozorov, the Red Wonder Child, he was 34 with a doctorate in economics, of having sold the Hebrew people's dignities, rights, security, and standing throughout the world for filthy money to Hitler and the Nazis. The red diplomat of Mapai, it continued, crawled on all fours to Hitler and his chums. The screed ominously concluded that the Hebrew people had always known how to deal with sellouts. Ben Gurion was in Europe at the time and had been physically assaulted by a Jabotinsky person in Warsaw. And after the killing of Arlozorov, Ben Gurion was convinced from the outset that the revisionists were guilty. A telegram from him published in Burl Katznelson's Davar on June 18th mourned the death of Arlozorov at the hands of thugs, biryonim, whose thirst for our blood. Katznelson was the Histadrut leader and was Mapai's intellectual conscience, and he was similarly convinced that the Jabotinsky people were the ones who killed him. At a memorial service held 2 weeks later in Yerushalayim, he denounced an unnamed sect focused on the myth of one man. That means they were referring to Jabotinsky. Bialik, who was still alive, thundered, choking with tears, "Defiled words have been cast into us, hitherto unknown. Biryon, let there be no place for them. Let our camp be holy, fire and blood." So Jabotinsky was also alive, and he didn't take this all lying down. On June 28th, he declared, "The vast majority of our people are embittered by the pogrom and blood libel being waged by Jews against Jews. But I warn them that by their cowed silence, they are helping the enemies of the Jews and Zionism distort the investigation into the murder." So over the next coming months, the issue tore itself apart. Class and ideological tensions between labor and the revisionists that had simmered throughout the previous decade finally exploded in elections for the 18th Zionist Congress. So we just finished the Zionist Congress. We just got the elections result. Walter and I were just dealing with this yesterday. So you see, the Zionist Congress is the 18th one. The revisionist share of the delegates dwindled to 14%, and it stayed there for 40 years. So I'm not going to read everything, but as the investigation stretched on, even the labor people began to doubt that these revisionists were guilty. As early as mid-August 1933, Bialik confided to Ben-Zion Katz, a journalist, arguing for the defendant's innocence, that notwithstanding his loathing for Jabotinsky, he was convinced that the killers were not Jews. In January 1934, Abdul Mejid, an Arab, jailed on another charge, confessed to involvement in the killing. But then, under pressure from the Arab executive, he recanted and said the Jews had tried to bribe him. The father of one of the officers who took Mejid's testimony sat on Yaakov Meir's rabbinical court, and he and Rav Kook became privy to the details of the confession. Rav Kook kept his own counsel and refused to be drawn in. When pressed, he said he wanted to let the justice system run its course. This was not the first political murder that the Yishuv had experienced. On June 30th, 1924, Yaakov Dahan, an Orthodox attorney, ultra-Orthodox intellectual of the Aguda, and a scarcely closeted homosexual, who as de facto foreign minister of the ultra-Orthodox community sought common cause with Arab nationalists in the battle against Zionism, was shot and killed in Jerusalem. It had long believed that his death was ordered by high echelons of the Haganah, the pre-state mainstream Zionist military force, though recently it has been suggested that it was done by a tiny splinter group called Hamifal. Either way, Dahan was certainly murdered by Jews. At the time, Rav Kook was in the middle of his lengthy trip to the United States. It was unclear how much of his attention that received. But now, at a meeting in Tel Aviv on March 13th, 1944, with Mayor Dizengoff, who was the mayor of Tel Aviv, Bialik and others, he and other rabbis, meaning Rav Kook, asked for a ceasefire in the war of words, and they said they should cool down all of this. So Rav Kook began to tell close associates that he was convinced of the revisionist innocence, and he added his signature to a letter signed by a number of public figures to pay for the defense of the defendant. On May 16th, Achimeir was acquitted of murder, but was kept in jail for subversive activities. He went on a hunger strike. Rav Kook wrote him to tell him to stop this. On June 8th, the court exonerated Rosenblatt, but sentenced Stavsky to death. And Rav Kook threw himself and all of his stature behind Stavsky's defense. This Abdel Majid, the Arab, repeated his confession to a different attorney. And Rav Binyamin, one of Kook's closest associates on the left, asked him to clarify his position. He answered, "I call heaven and earth," this is Rav Kook, "to witness that I care greatly with all my heart and soul for all of our people as individuals and all their parties, because I believe with perfect faith that each one of them is a special limb in the measure of the divine body, sacred and wondrous, that is the ecclesia of Israel. I am convinced that Stavsky is clean, in the right, entirely innocent of any guilt and suspicion of murder." On July 20th, 1934, an appeals court unanimously dismissed the lower court's conviction for lack of corroboration. The revisionists won. Jabotinsky, who had denounced Rav Kook as an untutored savage during the debate over women's suffrage 15 years earlier, because Rav Kook had come out against women allowing to vote, asked sincerely that he should be installed as the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. In trying to rebuild his bridges to the left, Rav Kook tried, and he offered to try to sway landowners to hire Jewish workers, long a pet cause of labor. Stavsky returned to Poland, where he organized immigration to Palestine, refused re-entry to Palestine by the British. He spent the war years in the United States, where he was part of the Bergson group of activists led by Rav Kook's nephew Hillel, and he returned illegally in 1947. He was one of the organizers of the attempt to bring arms to the new state of Israel under the auspices of the revisionist Irgun on the Altalena, which was shelled on Ben-Gurion's orders. He was killed in the ensuing battle with the Haganah forces under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Yitzhak Rabin on June 22nd, 1948, on the beach of Tel Aviv. The death sentence pronounced on Abdul Mejdid and the other Arab participant was also commuted to 10 years imprisonment. And this affair has left its mark in Israeli politics to the present day, between the mainstream left and the right. I brought Rav Kook, so I brought this because you see Rav Kook, the way he stands really for everybody. He stands for the right, he stands for the left, he saw the kedusha of every Jew. And he was willing to take a stand, even though it was at great potential political cost to him, because the left was in charge, and he supported the right in that case. But I think it's an important historical feature. By the way, when I visited, Tzvika's parents are buried in a little, or is at that time I don't think it was fun. I think both of them are buried in a cemetery in Tel Aviv, and it's right next to the there's that famous. There's a Rebbe. There's a Hungarian
Give a
Rebbe.
time, give a time.
No, there's a Rebbe
Flat
that all the Chayal,
Stefanesh.
the Stefanesher Rebbe. It's right there, and all the Chayalim, all it's called Stefanesh, and they all visit. They put candles there because they say he died like 200 years ago. But when they brought his body to Israel, it was completely intact. It had not decayed. They say tzaddikim. So you see Chayalim. I saw Chayalot there. Why am I telling this story? Because in that cemetery, all the Altalina survivors, the people who were killed in the Altalina are buried there. But they gave an order that they shouldn't be buried in one area because they knew it would become like a monument, and so they're all buried scattered throughout that cemetery. So I went and visited that cemetery.
It's interesting, Strelitzky got killed in the same area where Chaim Arlazor got murdered.
On that beach.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay. So I think
This was interesting. Whoa.
and George or Leslie, any comments? Because we had some people on the Zoom.
Nothing. How do you?
We learned a lot.
First, and
Right.
what do you sort of about?
Question is if Eretz Israel it's only
So what?
It means-
Doesn't think Eretz Yisrael is the most important thing? Like what's?
no. He thinks it's a method,
He's very.
but he's very clearly, that's what he writes.
Yeah, but see, most of the rabbis in Europe were not buried in Israel.
He's buried near,
It's in the
he's buried next to a rich guy. On
South,
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
That's what he writes.
Well, you weren't.
Frankfurt.
You
In
didn't.
the city.
What's his name? That's
Shalom.
Shalom.
Of Shalom.
I read the Meshech Chochmah, who wrote in Bechukosai that
What year?
those who,
What year?
well, he wrote it in 1890. He
Right.
wrote
That was.
that those who considered Berlin to be Jerusalem, there's going to be tremendous upheaval, where he was talking about the Holocaust 50 years before.
I guess if Rav Hirsch is in that camp, but I mean, Meshach Chochmah wasn't talking about Rav Hirsch.
Yeah, but the Meshech Chochmah himself said that he has a piece on Chisiso that
No, you're talking about the Jews in Berlin
No,
who
he
thought
said-
that, Berlin.
Is that there is no kedusha in anything except from if you're doing mitzvahs.
It's it's interesting. I just read recently that Rav Achille Dr. Weinberg was a Rosh Yeshiva in the Berlin
Berlin,
Yeshiva,
yeah.
Rav Hildesheimer, and they wanted to build a branch or move the yeshiva from Germany to Eretz Yisrael,
Yeah.
and all the Rabbanim, probably aside from Rav Kook, wasn't around. We'll see. Maybe he was there. Yeah, he surely was around. But most Rabbanim said no. There's no need for a rabbinic school that has like appreciates college, university in Eretz Yisrael. That's not the place for it, right? And so they didn't.
Well, certainly the elders in Yerushalayim would have thought that because they didn't want any kind of secular education. There was a ban. Rav Mariel Diskin made a ban, which was continued by Shmuel Salant. No secular. It exists till this day. And most evidence says, because remember, Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld went on a Tshuva train in 1914. They were very close. They were working Shituf Pula. What changed? In 1920, they laid the cornerstone of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Albert Einstein came, and Rav Kook spoke there. And he talked about we need engineering, and we're building a new modern state. And they broke with, I believe they broke with Rav Kook at that moment. Because he saw the importance of secular education, and they absolutely, that was the Yarab V'Yavar for them. Up until today, you can't have secular education in the Haredi schools in Yerushalayim.
For the boys. For the boys.
Girls are less.
Girls are allowed.
Yeah, because the girls needs to do panos.
So that needs to work. So Chaim Sukenik told us, Judy, that Machon Lev, he has tons of Haredi girls in their nursing school, and they're learning computers. Machon Lev isn't just Mizrahi. There's a lot of Haredi Jews in Machon. I've visited there.
So women too?
Absolute women.
Maybe